Now available in paperback and e-readers, John Haynes' Illuminati, the man who rules the world, takes on the head of the global elite in this all-new action-packed John Haynes series adventure. Get your copy of John Haynes' Illuminati in paperback and e-readers at Amazon.com and online booksellers everywhere. One of my viewers wanted to know what the future of race relations was going to be like in America. And the future of race relations in America is going to become far more tense and strained. And the reason why it's going to become far more tense and strained is because the perception of black people in the eyes of whites and non-blacks has become completely shattered. Now, many whites and non-blacks believe in the religion of white supremacy more than God, more than Jesus, and any other deity that they say that they serve. And since these people believe in white supremacy more than God, Jesus, or any other being that they say is their most high, many of these whites and non-blacks are basically just extremely having their faith shattered as related to white supremacy when Barack Obama was elected president in 2008. And when Barack Obama was elected president in 2008, that basically strained the relationship as related to black people and whites and non-blacks, because the entire reality of these people who believed in the religion of white supremacy was completely shattered. And with their whole belief system completely shattered, many of these whites and non-blacks became extremely upset at black people, and that's what's really strained race relations in America, because when they saw the reality of Barack Obama being elected president, what this did was make it where many of these people lost their minds, and that's what's causing the straining of race relations in the future. Because what many of these people who believed in the system of white supremacy just can't process is the idea that a black person was in a seat of power, something they thought would never be possible to happen. And that basically makes many of these whites and non-blacks extremely upset, because in their perception of the world, the only people who they believe would be in a position of power of controlling the United States would be a white person, because in their eyes, in the system of white supremacy, it's the white person at the top that makes them feel emotionally secure about the state of their nation, because a white person in that position of power is the thing that makes them feel comfortable. And the whole idea of a black man being in that seat of power as the president, this is what basically blew the minds of many of those who believe the religion of white supremacy. And that's what's been leading to the complete decline of race relations in America. America's race relations were already tense and strained throughout the 1990s and the early 2000s, but things came to a head when Barack Obama was elected president, because once Barack Obama was elected president, that's when many of the racists were just winding up getting triggered emotionally, because their entire perception of reality was completely destroyed. And once their perception of reality got destroyed on the left and the right, that's where a lot of these people basically wound up starting to lose their minds. Because in their perception of the world, as they were taught in the religion of white supremacy, a white person has to be in a position of power. A white person has to be in a position of authority for a nation to be considered functional. And what happened with the United States is that people started to become extremely dysfunctional when they saw Barack Obama, a biracial black man, in the position of political power. That's what really made a lot of these whites and non-blacks upset. And what's really interesting about this whole situation is that Barack Obama people were upset about him, about the color of his skin, even though the content of his character was anti-black, because with Barack Obama, he was a biracial black man who was born of an African father and a white mother, and his white mother basically taught him a culture of being a white person, and his grandmother taught him the culture of a white person in Hawaii, and he was not in a culture of black people or interested in black issues. So this was just a chocolate-covered white man, but that didn't affect many of these white supremacists, because when it comes to the white supremacist and his followers, they want their smooth world, and just seeing Barack Obama with his light skin and his nappy hair, that was enough to trigger many of these racists and trigger many of these racists to believe that their world was ending, even though Barack Obama was loyal to the whole system of white supremacy and made every effort to undermine cases as related to black people getting justice, such as his attorney general going out here and giving George Zimmerman a pass. I mean, Eric Holder, that coward, basically gave George Zimmerman a pass for violating Trayvon Martin's civil rights. Nothing was done about Michael Brown and his murder in that down south. I mean, Barack Obama, and then he also berated black men because he had daddy issues. But when many people, they were out here thinking, oh, just the whole idea of this biracial black man who had been taught by white women how to be a white man, they thought that this black man, just his skin tone, would just give people ideas, and that's how fragile the system of white supremacy is. Like Professor Black Truth talks about in many of his videos, he talks about how white supremacy is hypersensitive, and it's that hypersensitivity that leads to the race relations in this country getting strained. And it was possibly one of the reasons why Donald Trump was motivated to run for president, because he feared that black people would gain more economic and political power, even though Barack Obama was not about empowering black people or enriching foundational black Americans at all. But the whole thing is that race relations strained, and it strained under Barack Obama, because many of the racists across the country were triggered because they saw their smooth world being disrupted, a smooth world that was designed to make it where white supremacy and those white supremacists and those who received the benefits of white supremacy saw their entire world being upheaved, and saw their entire world being upheaved because they saw that a black person could actually come to power. But the main reason why Barack Obama was able to come to power was because many in white leadership basically took their roles for granted after the failure of the George W. Bush presidency, because the George W. Bush presidency was a textbook example of people taking their lives for granted here in America, because when it came to many Americans under George W. Bush, he basically took the entire nation for granted, and again, took the nation for granted because many Americans were comfortable as related to their smooth world where they were getting everything that they wanted. But that whole world started to fall apart because it was a house of cards as related to subprime mortgages, as related to the whole situation with Katrina, the hurricane. I mean, the country was falling apart for years because people took their lives for granted in the system of white supremacy. And once they saw that Barack Obama became president, that basically shattered their reality. But the whole thing is, their reality was being shattered because they lived in a smooth world. They basically took their lives for granted. And the whole idea of seeing that black president take power, that basically started the already tense racial relations in America to get worse. And they have been getting progressively worse because white supremacy has a bruise to its ego, a major bruise to its ego, because a black man could rise to power inside of that system. Black men could rise to power as related to that political system, and that's the thing that has many of these individuals extremely upset. And race relations are going to get progressively worse here in America if we look at all of the incidents that have gone on ever since Barack Obama became president. All of the black people who have been winding up dead and never getting justice, and the times that we do get justice, and turn things up. I mean, I look at the whole murder of George Floyd as a major turning point that shows how things are getting progressively worse. And even after the death of George Floyd, where we got the Biden administration giving us a empty symbolic thing as related to justice by sacrificing Derek Chauvin, but the policy still remaining in place because we recently just had an incident with Frank Tyson who wound up losing his life. And what's really sad is with the death of Frank Tyson, we didn't really see much of the mainstream media talk about the murder of Frank Tyson, I believe. And what's even scarier is I didn't hear much from many of the pro-black YouTubers talk about Frank Tyson. I mean, I had a viewer ask me to do that video, and even though I have said that I have a policy where you have to pay me to do videos, I still went out and did the video on Frank Tyson. But I ain't seen many of the other channels even talk about Frank Tyson, a situation that shows us race relations are getting worse in this country. I mean, here we are almost 4 years after the murder of George Floyd and the symbolic sacrifice of Derek Chauvin to the criminal justice system and his fellow officers, and we don't see how things are getting any better, and things are getting progressively worse after we've seen the election of Donald Trump and Joe Biden. Again, presidents that basically are mirror images of each other, because when I look at race relations in this country, it's getting progressively worse over time. And it's getting progressively worse because when it comes to abusers like codependent people, they start to get more out of control when the person they're abusing starts to rise and look to take power. Whenever you start to see the person looking to start taking power, that's when the abuser starts to lose control of themselves and start to get more out of control. And that's why you see the straining of racial relations, because they just got upset about this semblance of an idea of a black person taking power, like they thought with Barack Obama, even though Barack Obama was controlled opposition. What really upsets them even more than Barack Obama was all of those black folks turning up in the streets of this country. That's what upsets a lot of them, because this basically shatters their reality as related to their codependent system of white supremacy and shows that their system is losing power. And this is what scares them, because they know that if we get the system of justice that Neely Fuller Jr. talked about, they won't be the ones in power. And that's why black relations with whites and non-blacks is getting progressively worse. It's getting progressively worse because these people fear losing all the benefits they get in the system of white supremacy in this religion. They fear losing the blessings that their false God has given them. They fear having to come out of the lies that were told by the demons of white supremacy that told them that they had power, and they fear losing the lie that the devil told them. They fear that the lie is going to be revealed to be the truth, and what they fear is under a system of justice, they won't have that power given to them, because if God brings in the system of justice, they won't be the ones who will be out here receiving the benefits. No, every man will be blessed by God as related to their faith in him, and they will be receiving things based on a system of merit, not be given things just because they have a certain skin color. That's what many people have them angry out here, and that anger is rooted in fear of losing power, and rooted in the fear of losing their control over black people in this codependent relationship where they had power for years. That is what many of these people fear as related to this whole system of white supremacy, and that's why the future of race relations is going to get progressively worse in this country. So everybody black has to tighten up their chin strap, because the future of race relations in America is going to get progressively worse as many of these whites and non-blacks see themselves losing power, and as they see black people taking their power back. I mean, I remember the way people were getting upset over the John Haynes Godbreaker cover. The whole idea of an actual image of black power upset a lot of people, and that's, again, if that would upset you, an image of a black man taking power, I just shudder at what's going to be in the future, because as more black people start taking more power, as we refuse to go out here and take our booties to the poll to vote for blue man no matter who, and demand tangibles in exchange for our government, as we start to look to take more of our power, we have to get ready for a struggle, because in order to get progress and move the country forward, black people have to get ready for a struggle to make progress. And again, the road to black empowerment is a rough one, and that's what people have to understand about this whole situation. The future of race relations is going to go from being codependent to interdependent, because in a system of justice, everyone must take responsibility and accountability for their actions, and that's the thing that has many of those whites and non-blacks who have benefited in the system of white supremacy scared. They're scared of actually being in a world where they have to take responsibility for themselves and take responsibility for their place in the world. That's what's got them terrified to the point, and that's why race relations are so tense and strained in this country right now. Now, this was a video requested by a viewer, and if you want to request a video, you can send me a Cash App for a minimum of $15 by clicking the link in the description box, or sending a minimum of $15 to the PayPal. And if I know something about that subject, I will make that video for you. And if you want to pick up some of my positive black fiction on the SJS Direct imprint, you can find the books of the ISIS series, the Esteem series, the John Haynes series, the books of the Spinsterella trilogy, my black vampire novel, Eternal Night, my black sorority novel, The Thetas, or my black business book, A Recipe for Success. You can find all those books on Amazon.com in paperback and Kindle format. You can also find them at other online booksellers like Draft to Digital, Google Play, Barnes & Noble, Walmart, and Target. And that's all I have to say for this video. You can comment, rate, and subscribe. Now available in paperback and e-readers, ISIS, Amari's Revenge. The goddess next door is confronted by a Nubian queen out for revenge at the Metropolitan Museum of Art in this inaugural ISIS series adventure. Get your copy of ISIS, Amari's Revenge in paperback and e-readers at Amazon.com and online booksellers everywhere. Coming to paperback and e-readers, Esteem Horror in the Hamptons. The aspiring angel tries to escape a house of horrors in this all-new Esteem series adventure. Pre-order your copy of Esteem Horror in the Hamptons in digital format at Amazon.com, Google Play, Draft to Digital, and other digital booksellers, or pick up your paperback copy on May 24th. Support Black-owned and Black-operated digital broadcast media. www.niceradionetwork.com. Nice Radio Network, broadcasting 24 hours a day, 7 days a week.